Welcome to Money Matters TV. I'm Patricia Dunn of the Dunn Wealth Management Group at Merrill Lynch in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. And tonight my co-host is James Chan of Asia Marketing and Management. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Understand that this program is taped, so my comments regarding the market apply for the time of this taping, which may be different from the time of the viewing. But James, as you know, we have started off 2018 with a bang.
Yes, we did.
Equities have been very, very strong. Our market already is up 4%, and we're not through the month of January yet.
Right.
And your own Hang Seng market is also up 4%.
I know. That's amazing. It's good. So far, so good.
But there are some warning signs on the horizon. Volatility has reached record lows. Mm-hmm. If we make it through the end of February without as much as a 5% pullback, we will have gone 14 straight months without a 5% decline. And that has never happened in history. Typically, you'll have a 5% decline every 50 days. So this is significant. Our biggest risk right now for our equities is probably the rising interest rates and the fear of inflation. Mm-hmm. But we don't expect it to affect equities right away. It's going to take a while. But our bond market, which is of particular interest to our viewers who are retired and have heavy concentrations in bond, the bond market has entered a bear market. Mm-hmm. As recently as last July of 2017, I was starting to see bond portfolios where for every $2 to $3 of cash flow produced, the investor was giving back $1 in principal. And when you go into a bear market in bonds, eventually that'll become dollar for dollar. For every dollar you produce in cash flow, you give back $1 in principal. And ultimately it'll go the other way, where for every $2 to $3 you're producing in cash flow, you're giving back more than $2 to $3 in principal. So this is a very dangerous time for bond investors. And initially, as money comes out of bonds, where's it going to go? Mm-hmm. Into equities. So that should help us continue to have a good equity market. Mm-hmm. Until inflation starts raising its ugly head. So these are things that we need to be concerned about. As for pulling out of the market, I have people that ask me that all the time. And you don't want to miss the last year of a bull market because it can be a very exciting ride. But we do expect at some point this has to slow down. We've just come up so far, so fast. But most predictions now are like 2019 or the second half of 2018.
When maybe a correction may happen,
mm-hmm.
but that's still quite some months away.
It could be some months away. But then, of course, the crystal ball isn't that crystal. It could happen really at any time, but we don't really see it happening.
Yeah, because you can't have things going up and up and up. I mean, wonderful. It would be wonderful, but it's just almost impossible.
It is impossible. It's not almost. It is. Markets don't go straight up. They're not bank accounts.
Right. So if a correction has to happen, how steep would that be, or it's difficult to predict?
It's very difficult to predict, but I ask people to put things into perspective. Mm-hmm. In November of 2016, mm-hmm. when we were electing the president, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. the Dow was at 17,000.
Right.
And today we're at 26,000.
Amazing.
So if we went to 22,000 or 20,000, how much of a setback would that really be?
That's why people need you.
Exactly. Well, do you have a few minutes for a viewer question?
Sure.
We have a viewer question from Ralph Thompson of mm-hmm. Philadelphia, and he would like to know, do you think that China's economy will continue to grow at 6%?
Oh, well, again, predicting itself is scary and kind of full of chutzpah. But people love predictions. So let me do the American thing first, which is to answer the question bluntly, I think so. The 6% is likely to stay for quite some time. Well, how do I say that? Well, first of all, I even before I came over to meet the two of you, I looked up Baidu.com, Baidu, which is the Chinese equivalent of Google. In Chinese, I read Chinese, of course.
Okay.
And I just wanted to make sure what the Chinese government is saying about 2018 growth rate. And the government itself telling its own people, it's not telling the West, telling its own people, that the government expects growth rate to be between 6 and 6.5%, at least in this year. But that's the Chinese government point of view. Then I look up a Western institution, and I looked up Deutsche Bank in Hong Kong. There are people who do research, and they predict 6.3% in 2018, which is not so bad. So it's higher than 6%. And then, of course, I looked up the World Bank. World Bank has even a slightly higher prediction, which is 6.4. Now, so these are the support for my conclusion, simple enough. However, life is never that neatly packaged. You can, it really depends on why you want to ask this question. If you better look at your own unique business and make a judgment. In other words, you cannot rely on generalities, like a number, and then you invest. That would be quite scary. Because in my experience, I have a very long-term client, 30-odd years and still ongoing. Earlier in 2017, we really were prepared that business in China would be extremely slow, and it would be happy if we could just like playing bridge, just made. No, we got so much business coming in, so it's very unpredictable. So that's my caution. So my answer is straightforward, but be cautionary.
Well,
don't go nuts.
Don't go nuts, which
Yeah.
is exactly what I'm telling my clients. Yes. This process and discipline is very important at the top of a market. Well, with us tonight is our special guest, Gene Linkmeyer of Linkmeyer Law. And Linkmeyer Law has a very interesting niche, so I'm really looking forward to meeting Gene. Gene, welcome to the program.
Good afternoon. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Let me start off with this. I know you've talked to me and told me about business divorce, and it's really something I can't get my arms around.
Right.
Can you give me a good definition of what is a
can.
business divorce?
I can, and like our other host, I'll do it in a Western way first,
Yeah.
and then I'll expand.
Right.
A business divorce is when a partnership or a business enterprise is just falling apart, like in a family divorce. Let me give you, though, some meat to put on those bones. If you dread going to work, you're probably in a business divorce. If you have a partner who refuses to sign bank documents with you, you're probably in a business divorce situation. If you have co-managers with you who refuse to budget for the future or to think about capital expenditures for your business, you're probably in a business divorce situation. Okay? And now, of course, there are caveats to each one of these things, but these are the indicators that you're heading towards a conflict that might end up in a business divorce. You need to plan for that.
Even before you go into business, you probably have to plan for that.
This is the sort of area of law where it's good to talk to me before you need me. Okay. Afterwards, it's often too late, and it's more expensive, both for the business as well as for the fees.
Very quickly, Gene, before the term business divorce, was there a term?
There was the term of commercial litigation.
Okay.
And it was a general sense.
Right.
But we've come into a different world now. We've got an LLC boom going on in the United States, right? So this form of
yes.
corporate entity is only about 20 years old.
Okay.
And it's really become very, very popular, and especially with the most recent passage of the Federal Jobs and Tax Act, which we can talk about in more detail. But But this entity has created hundreds of thousands of new entities that have to operate on a fiduciary and a legal level that individuals have never had to do before. Okay, so we've got 8,000 baby boomers a day who are retiring, and 750,000 small businesses a year are going to go up for sale or die. Okay, just go into the grave with their founders. And those are the numbers that we're trying to approach and deal with, and why the niche is so important, because simple commercial litigation no longer can encapsulate and care for all of those local and family businesses that are private. And we're not talking about stock exchange. I'm very happy to hear about the growth of the international market and even of our Dow. It's very important. But the businesses that need services that deal with business divorce and succession planning are private businesses. These are family businesses. These are local.
Well, can you name a few top things? Like if you had point of mind, what are the top things that would cause a business divorce?
Sure, it's a great question. You know, the most obvious one is what the accountants will call defalcation. Someone is stealing from you. They got your hand in your till.
That's very.
So this will happen when, for example, dealing with a local manufacturing company, they had a large investor who was not an active manager, and he orders an audit, a CPA firm to come in and audit the books because it's not returning enough value to him as an investor. Audit comes back clean, so he calls in a workout specialist. Is there no profit? We're investing, our inventory is growing, our receivables are growing. Where's the profit? Where is it? The business workout specialist comes in and looks at the bills of lading and the AR and the AP and says, something doesn't connect. One of you people have a question for me or a story to tell me. Which one of it is? Treasurer raises his hand. For the last 10 years, he's been faking receivables in order to make the business look more profitable. Its inventory was growing in ghost form.
Oh.
And the accounting firm hadn't found it in the audit. So here's one of the major things that leads to business divorce. Someone has stolen from you or lied to you on such a fundamental level that you cannot trust them any longer to be a part of your management team. Now, this person is a stockholder of 50% of the company at the time, as well as an employee. So he can be fired, but he still owns half your company and can control the direction that your company takes. That's the business divorce. You need to get rid of that person. They're not trustworthy. The bank won't accept their signatures any longer on any loans. The employees have no faith in them, won't follow them if they try to lead. So that's the number one. That's the number one, most obvious, most real reason. The second one is death, right? So a founder passes away, and the founder's children or the co-founder's children are now interested in coming into the business, and they want to take their part of it away and leave with it.
I want my inheritance.
Right. And that leads to things like tussles for control. Well, we're going to call a shareholders meeting. No, you can't call it. We're going to call it first. And we're going to have a directors meeting that eliminates shareholder meetings and these sorts of tussles. That's so a death or a incapacity of one of the founders, one of the major shareholders, is the second largest, most obvious way. And the third one are these these other inklings that I've mentioned to you. If you've got a partner who's not willing to talk about the future, well, should we be investing more in R&D? Should we be investing more in marketing? Should we buy a new machine that can operate 24 hours a day and produce machine tools? It costs $250,000 to do it. Should we buy that? Well, I don't want to talk about it. I don't think we should be talking. We have other projects that need to be done. Well, no. That's a key aspect of your business. You need to be able to have that clash of ideas. And if that's not happening, you have to start thinking about whether or not you're both on the same pathway for your business. Now, of course, that's a simplified, boiled down example. But
what got you into this line of specialization? There must be a reason. Is it because suddenly like 10 companies came to you more or less at the same time?
Yes.
And so you kind of said, oh, mother lode, this is where I should specialize.
If only it was that easy. No.
I know.
It's a great question. I believe that family and private businesses are really a server of society. Right? These are the businesses that feed us. These are businesses that clothe us. These are businesses that keep us warm. in very literal ways. Small businesses are the ones that install the heating and ventilation and air conditioning. Small businesses are the ones that deliver the food. Franchises that make food of restaurants. These are all the small private businesses that pay us and feed us on a day, as consumers and as owners on a daily basis. We have to care for them. We have to care for them to make our society continue to function. And that's why I got involved, because that is a niche that's missing. That care and feeding of small and local and private businesses is missing in the law. And there's a lot of focus on international. There's a lot of focus on these macro economic issues. I want to focus on and care for our local business.
Let me ask you a question. I have many business owners as clients, and one of the questions I'm asked, which is really outside of my circle, is how often do I need a business valuation?
Right. Oftentimes, I understand the question, and oftentimes folks will think that that's the beginning point of a discussion about the future of the business or whether or not its current form and its current partners can continue. It's not that important. It's really not. First of all, there is no proper way to do a business valuation. There are experts who will say you do it with A, B, and C. There are experts who say no, you have to do X, Y, Z. Oftentimes, the most important business valuation is the one that the owners believe. And sometimes it's one that they write themselves, and sometimes it's not. Now, you can take, business owners, I will often advise, to take some outside influence on the valuation, but I don't recommend that it be the sole point or an annual exercise at all. It's many thousands of dollars for no appreciable benefit. What you want to have is sufficient key man coverage or insurance coverage, life insurance, for what you expect the value of the business to be and the value that you need it to generate to pay your estate for the value. That's the essential thing. So if a spouse has passed away, well, just because they have a manufacturing business that's worth $10 million, the spouse who's remained behind can't access that 50% of the $10 million business.
That's right.
Right? You need to have planned beforehand for that. And this is an act of love that we have to do for our spouses and our families and our children.
But I would assume that during the period, the pre-divorce lawyer period, so to speak, when it was labeled commercial litigation, people were into these ideas of a prenuptial.
Yes.
Anyway, it might not have been called with that label. So what did they do at that time? Again, going back to...
I'll tell you. The prenuptials are things called shareholders agreement. Right?
Right.
But the problem with the prenuptials in the corporate world, in the sense of a shareholders agreement, is that, for example, it was written in 1987 when we were just starting out and all we had were 2 nickels to rub together. And so our shareholders agreement at the time said, listen, if you want to buy me out, for example, this is a real story, if you want to buy me out, you can do it at book value. And if I want to buy you out, I'll do it at book value. And if either one of us dies, the other gets to buy at book value. Well, when you have 2 nickels and that's it,
Right.
book value is fine.
I gotcha.
But 30 years later, when you've built a thriving business and it's worth multi-million dollars, and then, as it happened in this circumstance, this is a glass company in Vineland, New Jersey. One of the co-founders dies in January. The second co-founder dies in June. So this is a $10 million a year business. And you've got one half of the one family of the one founder saying, well, I get to buy you out at book value, which is about $100,000. Okay? And the second, and of course the family who's passed away can't, that's a lot of money to give away for nothing. Right. But of course the document, the prenup, the shareholders agreement from 1987 says that that's what's supposed to happen, right? Luckily, you say lucky, you say good, you say, but the second side, when they pass away, now the first side says, well, who's going to pay who for book value? And you become on a level playing field, and you can actually negotiate what the resolution is. In that case, we had to have a judge tell the first family that they cannot just steal this multi-million-dollar company for a couple $100,000. It's not it's not reasonable. And while some accommodation has to be made for who passed first, it can't be as egregious as that. So the prenuptials, these things are things that have to be reevaluated on an annual. That's scary. annual
It's
basis.
like updating one's will.
It is. It's that important.
Yeah.
It really is.
But I wouldn't think that would fall under the purview of the company's CPA, which naturally they would have a CPA. To me, it seems like a reason to have an attorney
Yeah.
as part of this circle.
It's true. It's true. Because the accountant's skill is in calculating what has happened. Okay? And they could do some planning, of course, and every CPA will debate me about it. But that's their core skill. What the lawyer's core skill is planning for what's going to happen next. That's where we're focused. Tell me where you need to go, and I can arrange a structure for you that if you wish to follow, you can get there. And that's what's so important about having a lawyer as a part of that. It's really an experts conclave that ends up happening as a part of these decisions, and it's episodic. So by that I mean, for example, someone needs to have a wealth manager. Well, what are my wealth needs? What are they today, and what do I want them to be? Okay. Therefore, now you know that. You say, I need my business to continue to operate at this maximum efficiency or thereabouts for this number of years. And I'm going to have a certain number of investments to make that happen. Okay? Now you've got to have shareholders that support that, make that happen. And to do that, you have to have a lawyer say, these are the documents. You're obligating yourself, for example, my co-shareholder, personal guarantees on all of these extra new loans that we're going to be having. Well, why are we doing all of this multi-million-dollar investing in our business? I get paid fine every week. Well, it's because our macro goals for my family and my investment in this company is X, as my wealth manager says. You're going to need to have an insurance agent involved in this. You're going to need to have perhaps an ESOP consultant. What's an ESOP? Is employee stock option plan. Perhaps that's one of the goals that you have. You've built this company and you wish to now kind of deed it over to those who helped you, to your employees. So you might need to have an ESOP consultant. It's a collective of professionals that really need to come together to make this happen the right way. And it's not all at once. As I say, when I say episodic, that's what I mean. It's not going to be all at once that you're going to have 5 professionals breathing down your throat at a board meeting. It's not like that at all. It's setting up and getting them in line to do their jobs as needed when the script calls for it.
So start with the CPA, then add the lawyer, and then add as you go along.
For the best of the plan.
Okay.
Perfect.
I know that you said earlier that people should have somebody like you right off the bat, right in the very beginning, before the world is formed. But here's a tough question. So many businesses just look at costs. They may be greedy, and don't need to be negative. It's just, greed is part of human nature too. They want to grow, they want to be positive, but on the other hand, how do you convince potential clients you are needed?
Right. It's so challenging, right? Because business folks are risk takers, essentially, at root. And so to them, just to add one more risk onto the plate, I can put that on and not worry. But at some point in time, if you want to have a successful business, you have to have a plan. If you don't plan, right, failing to plan is planning to fail. If you don't have this plan, your business will fail. Now, the definition of failure is not on a weekly, monthly, annual basis. It's at the end of the line, okay? 100% of businesses will need a succession plan because all of the humans are guaranteed to die at some point. Those are the shareholders. What's going to happen next?
Well, I have clients that are actually outside shareholders of local businesses. They're not part of the business,
Right.
But the business owners came to them and said, will you invest in our
Sure.
business? And one of the questions I'm often asked is, can they get corporate records in order to track their own investments?
Yes. And in fact, what I'd like to be able to do is make a special offer for all of the guests, all of your guests and clients. They just need to mention Money Matters, and we will, my firm will do a free books and records request to allow any of your viewers obtain, in the month of February 2018, to obtain free books and records request for any business that they wish to have, of which they are a private shareholder. So, for example, Another story from the front lines, right? We have an investor who is responsible for a pension plan for a particular state, and the pension plan is invested in a startup company 15 years ago when this company was on nobody's radar. But the university that sponsored it had invested intellect and intellectual capital into this. The outside pension plan had invested. This company takes off, $300 million investment. It yields to be a $300 million investment. It started off in the hundreds of thousands, and there were a couple of tranches that added along the way. But it's a private company. Where is my? I've invested about $500,000. The company is now worth $300 million. It started at zero. What's my percentage?
Exactly.
And how can I liquidate if needed, right? Because you can't go to the stock exchange. There's no New York Stock Exchange for these startup companies, for these balloons. Right? So where do you go to sell it? How do you sell it? How do you value it? That's where books and records come in, just like your clients have asked. And that's where we can help. How much is mine? I had a friend, my dentist came to me. He said, do you want to invest for $10,000 in this new venture? And I said, yes. We added it in. How much is it worth today? Let's find out. It's called a books and records request. We'll do it for your clients for free.
Wonderful. One last question.
Sure.
The new Fiduciary Law,
Yes.
which went into effect this year, of course affects everyone's retirement plan. But I recently read that it is also in the state of Pennsylvania going to impact businesses.
Yes.
Can you explain to us what effect this will have on shareholders and directors?
Sure. Here's the short version of it, and readers can pass along additional questions, which we'd be happy to answer. But fiduciary standards within small corporations, limited liability corporations, can be oppressive and unintendedly oppressive. They can prevent a management from doing what it needs to do. And so the creation of fiduciary standards, there's a fiduciary standard of care, there's a fiduciary standard of diligence, there's a fiduciary standard. There are enough stripes of fiduciary standards that you don't necessarily want them all applied at the same time to the same people. Sometimes you only want the managers to have them. Sometimes you only want the owner, the shareholders to have them. And that you can construct where those fiduciary duties lie in Pennsylvania now under the new LLC Act that it went live at the end of 2017. And it now allows even pre-existing LLCs to reshape those fiduciary duties and apply them only in certain circumstances.
Well, Gene, this has been absolutely fascinating.
Glad
I
to
could
help.
do another whole show with yet more questions, but we do want to talk about our next guest. At our next show is Michael Rappaport, and Michael is the CEO of Chariot Solutions, which is a very interesting company. They provide cutting-edge technical services to mid and large-size companies that embrace open source and other emerging technologies. Basically, their expertise is technology, and it's across all industries. I think that would be a show very much worth watching. So thank you for joining us today. James Chan and I and Gene Linkmeyer want to remind you that your money matters.